Hi everyone, and welcome to the very first devlog for my new game, Alien Frontier. It's a third-person open-world roguelike, and if you liked Risk of Rain 2, you'll love this. This devlog series will document the ongoing process of my game as I take it into early access, and here you'll be able to see updates, gain dev insight, and even give feedback into the game's development. But first, introductions. I'm a solo developer who's been working on this game in the spare time outside my day job. What you're seeing here is approximately 6 months work, and I'd roughly estimate that I'm about a year or so out from early access. I've got over a decade of experience working with Unreal, so using Unreal Engine 5 was an absolute no-brainer for me. In an upcoming video, I'll get into why Unreal is such a powerful tool. But for today, I'd like to focus on setting the stage. I'm going to give you a rundown of Alien Frontier and lay out what to expect in the coming months. At its core, every game should be easily boiled down into a core gameplay loop. For Alien Frontier, it's as follows. You play as an intergalactic prospector, and you must explore dangerous alien planets, mine the world for resources, fight off deadly aliens, and gain upgrades which allow you to take on even more dangerous foes. To get into more detail, the game is broken up into 3 days. For each day, you have a number of unique resource collecting objectives to complete, which often involve exploring and interacting with the game world. I was inspired to make a game that actually encourages players to engage in the world. So what do I mean by that? Well, often do we see open world games that are massive in their breadth, but are fairly static. With maps filled with markers and mini-maps that guide you to your goal, there's actually very little room or reason to, explore. So many game worlds are really just layers of art underneath a mini-map that holds all the data. I mean, how many game worlds could you swap out the art, environment, weather, foliage, and still ultimately notice no change in gameplay? Too many. So one of the goals of Alien Frontier is to have players observe, interact, and explore their world using their skills of observation, and not just by staring at a mini-map for the entire runtime. I'll give an example of this. So, in one run, you might be tasked with finding a varium, which is a resource that is found in locations where birds flock to. So what I need to do is scan the skies and find where a flock is. Once I've done that, I gotta scare them a bit. Then they'll take to the skies, and I have to pay attention to where they land. Once I've found where they settle, I know where the resource is, which allows me to set up a mine in order for me to complete my objective. And it's not just objectives that are based around exploration. Upgrades and secrets can only be found by scanning the horizon and looking at the world. These are visible via plumes of smoke or other visual indicators. But it's a roguelike, so there's plenty of combat, of course. Players will need to clear out alien infestation, and it's here where they'll engage in bullet hellish combat. One key feature of the combat is the mobility. You can dash, grapple, and even use jetpack to always stay moving.
A, B, C. A always B, B, C closing.
You'll collect clots, which are credits to spend during runs. Clots drop from enemies that are killed, and they only stick around for a few seconds, so you need to get to them fast. What this does is encourage players to fight up close and personal while staying mobile. You need to get in there to collect your resources. And in between it all, you can find upgrades peppered along the land. These are additive bonuses that can change your playstyle and synergize well together. From shot duplicators to personal protection drones, there's a lot at your disposal, and you can create some truly game-breaking builds. When the player completes 2 objectives, the day ends, and this is topped off with a massive boss fight. If you manage to survive, the next day starts and you'll see your impact on the world. Mining towers, power lines, and even a small village has cropped up. It's just like how old gold rush towns would suddenly form out of nowhere after a particularly abundant area of resources was found. This outpost is home to some of the permanent progression mechanics, where you can use your XP to upgrade the different stores and services here. From there, you go back out into the wild, ready to complete even more objectives, face harder enemies, and get even better upgrades. If you manage to survive 3 full days in the Alien Frontier, then you win the run. Now, before I go, I want to get a bit into the development of this game. So, I mentioned earlier that this is roughly 6 months' work, and Hopefully you're thinking that this looks pretty polished for half a year's worth of work. There's a few reasons behind that. Two primary things. So first of all, this isn't really 6 months work because this game is built upon essentially the husks of other projects that I've abandoned or let go over time.
Get out of here! Can't you see we don't want you anymore?
So that's one really important learning I've had in my years of game development is when to cut your losses. A lot of times I've had a project where there's been a mechanic that's really good or an idea that I've really liked, but it's important to step back and kind of evaluate it and realize, is this going to be a viable full-term product on the Steam marketplace where buyers are actually pretty picky, and it's really difficult to step away from those things, but it's a hell of a lot better than just kind of having a project that's not really going to work out or only going to be a middling success and just trying to kind of hold it all together even though really you need to abandon it. And one thing that makes that easier to swallow is essentially the idea that you can take things from those previous projects, not just your learnings, but also a lot of your assets, your code base, a lot of your functions. So if you build things in a smart, modular way, you can easily patch them in. And that's a lot of what's in Alien Frontier right now. So the entire world generation system was actually pulled from a previous roguelike I did and later abandoned. So that system only needed a few tweaks to get up and running. So that was a really big time saver for me. And I also really focused a lot on the art and presentation of the game in the first 6 months, probably more than what people would expect. So there's a really common saying in game development that you should prototype and do things really lo-fi early on just to prove out your mechanics. And while that's definitely true, I think it's slightly different for smaller and solo indie developers like myself. A big reason of that is you definitely get this kind of endorphin kick when you actually put in a nice looking polished mechanic or asset in your game. It just feels really, really good.
So good.
And that's a really important thing working solo, when motivation is really one of the primary resources you have to manage. Being able to put in some high quality assets that make you feel good about the long-term viability of your game is really important because it gives that motivation boost to keep you going. And I hope it's paid off. I hope you're looking at this footage and thinking, hey, that looks pretty fun. But for now, I'm going to get back to making the game, and I'll see you all in the next devlog that gets more into the development process and the tech behind things. So let me know what you think of the game. Feel free to add in the comments if there's anything in particular you want to focus on. I've got a few ideas on what I'm going to cover next time, but I'm always happy to hear feedbacks or suggestions. And of course, if you want to keep up to date, feel free to subscribe. And more importantly, if the game does look interesting to you, please consider wishlisting on Steam. Wishlists are a vital thing for indie developers since it determines how much visibility your game gets on launch. That's why I wanted to get my Steam page up at least a year before it launches, so I can get those sweet, sweet wishlists. Anyways, that's all for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.